Okay, this is Ken Rossignol with the Chesapeake Today. We're here at Fitzy's Marina at Compton on Breton Bay with the Potomac River in the background and Delegate Matt Morgan in front of us.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
Hey, well, great. Speak up. Okay.
Yeah, we had a little music in the background. Just wrapped up graduation at Chopticon High School. Thought I'd come out here and meet you and knock out an interview.
You said Chopticon or Chapticon?
Chopticon.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of people that pronounce it Chapticon. That's why I asked. Okay. Now, you just finished up a legislative session, which is, basically they raised taxes, they raised fees, they took away liberties. Did I miss anything?
We also stopped a lot of stuff, so it wasn't all it wasn't all bad.
When we say we, you mean?
I would say me and other Freedom Caucus members up in Annapolis.
Okay.
This was a pretty contentious session. Came into session, we're looking at a $3.3 billion deficit caused by overspending the Democratic Party. 2 years ago, they had a $5 billion surplus. They've squandered that. They turned a $5 billion surplus into a $3 billion deficit.
Wasn't that Trump's fault?
Well, it's hard to blame a guy that just didn't get there until January 20th.
Yeah.
But yet they're managing to do that.
Okay. So we live in the state of Maryland, where the governor is a moron and a Marxist. Okay. Is there any chance of it getting better? I mean, is Hogan going to come back and win the governorship back again next year?
Well, look, I think there's going to be some candidates running next year, and I'm internally optimistic about things. I think states change all the time. Maryland's at a rough patch right now. The Democratic Party is completely out of control. They have some Marxist tendencies.
But they're not even the Democratic Party anymore. They're the Democratic Socialist Party.
And that's how they refer to themselves as. And there's numerous cases, and I can give you examples of that. The reparation bill that they passed through this year was really rooted in Marxism. Wait
a minute, you're against paying for slaves?
Well, look, that bill didn't
have you ever owned a slave?
That bill didn't even have to do with slavery. It had to deal with people in historical marginalized communities from 1877 to 1965. That's how the bill was phrased. We went through a bunch of different amendments on that bill. I gave a heck of a floor speech. Your audience can go out there and look that up. That's on my Facebook page. And
What's the name of the Facebook page?
Delegate Matt Morgan.
Okay.
And look, the governor last week vetoed that bill, so he ended up agreeing with me that it was a bad deal for Marylanders.
Doesn't that make you want to run for cover if the Marxist governor agrees with you?
Well, you know what? A broken clock can be right twice a day.
Okay. All right. So in St. Mary's County, more locally speaking, we have an election next year.
Yeah.
Right? People are already lining up to run for office. Some have even announced, like this guy Tom Jarboe, okay, who advertises that he founded Leadership Southern Maryland, which all I can figure out is a group that trains people how to vote as liberals and raise taxes. I don't know what else they do. Okay. Did you go to Leadership Southern Maryland?
I have not gone to Leadership Southern Maryland.
Oh, how many elections have you won?
3.
3? And how many did you almost win?
4.
Okay. Hey, Dan, we're here. We have the owner of Fitzy's, Dan Fitzgerald, today here.
Beautiful day at Fitzy's. Come on out and see us.
It is beautiful.
Now, will you tell us about the specials this weekend?
I just walked in the door. I'm going to find out.
Well, your crab cakes are always special.
Crab cakes are always special.
I like the pizza with the crab dip on it.
Oh,
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's like the best deal in the menu.
We sold 45 of those last Sunday alone.
And the rockfish basket?
Those are...
I had it last weekend. Great.
I just picked up 80 pounds of fresh crab meat, so I've been getting to make crab cakes.
Okay, awesome. How many years is here for you at
33.
Fitzy? 33 years. Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right, so continuing back with Tom Jarboe.
Okay.
All right, he says he's a Republican. I think he's voted for a lot of tax hikes, but he's in good company there. We have other Republicans here. They voted for taxes to be raised the last 8 years in a row, and they do that through a method of they fail to maintain the constant yield. So when the state raises the assessments, the taxes automatically go up. The commissioners used to lower the constant yield, lower the tax rate, maintain the constant yield, and keep taxes from going up because of that. But these Republicans don't believe in that. What do you think they should do?
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on any individual candidates or anything like that.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the commissioners. The commissioners, they hired...
It's just not the commissioners, it's delegates, it's senators.
Yeah,
look,
but they hired a lobbyist to go to Annapolis when we have you.
Yeah, well, I was against that. But let me just make a quick comment. This happens every 4 years. We have Republicans that run as conservative. And it kind of cracks me up because every Republican that runs, Kent, is like a Freedom Caucus member. They come out there and talk about lower taxes, individual responsibility, talk about smaller government, and then once they get elected, they almost do the direct opposite of that.
Oh yeah, we have a commissioner, Scott Ostro. He advertised when he ran for election, lower taxes. He voted to raise taxes this year, and he did it by zooming into a commissioners meeting from his Alaskan cruise. He's on a cruise ship, and he voted to raise taxes here. That's incredible. Look, that's a new one on me.
Republicans, we should be the party of not bringing home the bacon, but the party of you shouldn't send it up to Annapolis or Leonardtown or Washington, D.C. in the first place. We're supposed to be the party where you keep your hard-earned money, not this government redistribution. So look, we need Republicans that are fiscally and culturally conservative going forward, because that's where the party is. The party is the party of the working class man right now. And that's where it aligns, and we just need more candidates really to adhere to that, and we need more constituent groups to hold them accountable. I hear that story all the time. It's like, well, we elected one of ours, and then we sent him up to Annapolis or D.C., and we're like, what happened to that guy? Well, because you elected one of you and sent him up to be one of them. And too often I think Republicans, we vote every 4 years and then we kind of check out after that.
Well,
whereas Democrats don't do that. They hold their elected officials accountable.
Crosby, he didn't fail to represent anybody that voted for him. They voted for higher taxes. He gave it to them. Even while he was moving his company out of the state to avoid a tax he just voted for.
I would say the policies that Marylanders have passed, and he was a big cause of that, the policies that they voted for the last 4 or 5 years, chickens have come home to roost. You go woke, you go broke. And they've passed bad policy dealing with crime. Look, when you have shoplifting that's so bad that businesses are putting stuff behind glass, and people are scared to go out shopping at night, and you have businesses closing down, that's a negative economic impact. We have an environmental policy that's so draconian, it has the highest utility rates in the region. Well, that has a negative economic impact. A lot of these policies that are passed in Annapolis or have bad economic outcomes that are really not economic policies. And that's why you're having such a huge difference between us and Virginia. And do you know who understands that best? Wes Moore. I would say, Ken, this is a funny story. So we launched the Freedom Caucus on a Tuesday. Wednesday, he releases his budget. And every media person in the state was there covering this. It was on the second floor of the State House. Well, I go to the press conference. I'm looking around, and it's me and our state director there, and I'm the only Republican in the room watching him release his budget. And he starts off the budget hearing. He's like, well, the problem in the state of Maryland is we've had a 70% increase in spending and only 3% economic growth for the state. And you can't be spending more money than you're bringing in. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy gets it. He sounds like me.
Do you think he was drunk? Was he drunk, maybe?
Well,
or on drugs?
I mean, he definitely nailed the talking points that 80% of the population would agree upon. He sounded like me. And then he turns around and releases a budget that does nothing what he talks about. It raised more spending.
Maybe he's a little Biden-esque and really doesn't know what's happening.
Well, I think they're counting on people just being naive and stupid and not really following through. They're having a hard time grappling with the fact that they no longer...
Back in the governor's office and the budget.
Okay.
you were talking about how he was actually agreeing with you when he introduced the budget, then he signed something that is not agreeable to anyone.
Well, in the original budget he released, he said spending was a problem, and it really didn't make any substantial cuts anywhere. And then it raised about 18 different taxes inside the budget. Some of the most egregious ones were, surcharge on cap gains. We talked about this new IT tax that was passed. One of the biggest things he did was create 2 new brackets. They claim they created a millionaire's tax, but they started off at $500,000. So it pulls in everyone that has like LLCs and pass-through entities like that. And look, it takes $1.6 billion out of the private sector economy, the economy that functions, that makes products and provides the services that we all need, and moves it over to government. So look, there's a big problem with government spending, and it starts in his office. I had a floor amendment there. His office budget has gone up 78% from what Larry Hogan had 3 years ago.
Another tax is when the county commissioners increase the public debt. They've increased it from like 60 million to almost 300 million over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Exactly what the hell's going on? I thought we had a state senator that's supposed to put that in his pocket and not pull it out of the drawer or whatever the hell it is.
So look, the borrowing is a big problem in my opinion.
That's a tax on your grandchildren.
Well, right, and the debt service payment is extremely high. And look, I just don't recall a lot of Republicans running on rebuilding the county. And I think there's been some decisions made in the last few years that have really been questionable.
Well, they have to redo
but look, they're going to
Chopticon
have to be
High
accountable
School.
to the voters
Well,
when that happens.
you just came from Chopticon High School's graduation. They have to rebuild that school. They have to put a new roof on it.
Yeah.
They don't have the money, but they're putting up a $60 million sheriff's headquarters, which we don't need. That's just so the deputies can go and hide from the criminals. They're still funding it. They still got it in their capital budget. What is with these county commissioners, and what can you do as a delegate to give them some leadership?
Well, I think speaking in kind of a unified voice about fiscal conservatism is something I've done since I started. I will tell you that the bonding authority that was submitted by the county commissioners was the only reason I voted for it was because we reduced it, and we cut and eliminated a lot of the excess authority that they had.
You reduced it by how much?
It was
15 million?
It was like 15 or 20 million when it was said and done.
And were they ticked off about that?
They were, but look, that's part of the negotiation process. So that's the checks and balances that we have for this form of government.
Well, this guy Mike Hewitt, he's been in there for 3 terms. He's done nothing but raise taxes and act like he's some sort of fiscal conservative when he actually is against the very definition of fiscal conservative.
Well, look, if you're going to spend the money, at some point you got to pay for it. And whether that's this year, next year, or when, but the chickens,
or for your grandchildren.
Yeah, your chickens eventually come down home to roost. And you're seeing that with the state government. One reason why Maryland just received a bond authority reduction there, it went from a AAA to, I think, a AA minus.
They crapped our rating.
Yeah, so yeah,
we had a AAA rating since 1973.
Yeah, and Moody's just recently downgraded us.
And they got rid of it.
Right, but one reason why they got downgraded is Maryland's debt services was always used to be secured by the small portion of property tax that goes to the state. And the state used to bring in about more money on property tax than they did their debt service payment. All this borrowing, including these bond bills that I constantly complain about, that ratio is about $500 million upside down, and that's what Moody's is looking at. That no longer is your debt service payment actually as secure as it used to be.
What is secure?
Well, I think right now, there's not a lot. Look, the state's in a bad situation. I mean, we just had a polling during session, UMBC poll, 53% of Marylanders are thinking about moving from the state. Almost every day I meet somebody who's like, hey, somebody's moving.
This area used to be part of Virginia, okay, until Maryland got a charter. This was part of Virginia. Why can't Southern Maryland, from Waldorf south, St. Mary's, Calvert, and the Eastern Shore be reunited with Virginia.
Well, funny enough, that probably would push the Republicans over the top in Virginia. And Virginia is thriving right now, but I'm not proposing any type of secession plans. Ironically, we had some delegations from Western Maryland.
That's not secession. That's reunification.
Reunification. Well, you have to have the creative language.
I mean, they're crackpots. The Republicans are really warmed over Democrats in St. Mary's County. That's really what they are.
There is. Look, I don't think that's just a problem in St. Mary's. It's a problem throughout the state of Maryland, probably the country.
You got a sheriff's been playing games and not notifying ICE, and St. Mary's County is listed as a sanctuary county by Homeland Security.
Well, that's not true. I verified that when I had reports of that.
I've seen it on their website.
And
it's on their website.
Corrected. That was never really true.
But it's on their website, and we're supposed to believe everything on websites.
Confirmed, and I can share the email with you from ICE if you'd like on that. Look, the part of the sanctuary state issue in different counties, it is a concern because people in Maryland have been significantly harmed by this. We've had some high-profile rapes and killings.
Yeah, but the U.S. Senator,
really no excuse.
The U.S. Senator from this state went to El Salvador. He didn't go to Harford County and see the family of Rachel Morin.
No, he didn't do that.
Okay.
I mean, he made it a priority to go to El Salvador and have margaritas with somebody that should have never been here in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the Trump administration released a report just yesterday hiding the true sanctuary counties in the state of Maryland, and it's troubling because Charles County was listed, Anne Arundel County was listed, Howard County was listed, you had the city of Annapolis, and of course Baltimore City was listed. And these are people that are simply, it's a little bit hard to understand, but look, once you have a criminal illegal alien arrested in custody, these counties are releasing them back onto the street when there's active warrants under arrest. And we've gone through a lot of trouble. We've pulled this issue. This is an 80-20 issue that the overwhelmingly majority of Marylanders agree with.
Some of the
Freedom Caucus members that these people should be turned over to ICE.
And some of the crimes that they have warrants for are what?
Rape, murder. I mean, look, this is a big problem in the state of Maryland. We've beat Westmore up over it left and right, and I'm proud to say that at least Democrats turned in a bill this year. We had it on the House floor several times where they poison pilled it. They were like, well, if the crime was committed after, I think it was June 1st, 2025 was the poison pill on there. It's like, okay, so if you committed a crime 3 years ago and you're here illegally, we're not going to turn you over to ICE? That's completely ridiculous. Their number one goal should be the safety of the citizens of Maryland. And it's disappointing to see elected officials in the city, in the state of Maryland, not adhering to that. They take an oath when they are elected to office, and they're just not upholding their constitutional duty.
Let me ask you about the Governor Thomas Johnson Bridge between Solomons and St. Mary's County. Okay. When is that going to fall in the river? Do you know?
I don't know when it's going to fall in the river. Hopefully never. But that bridge needs to be replaced. Look, the citizens of Maryland. I represent northern St. Mary's. And
you never heard of anybody committing suicide off the Benedict Bridge, right?
Yeah,
it's low.
Closer to the water.
So they need to replace with a bridge that's down low.
Well, the Solomons Bridge has to have that height because of the base, because of riparian rights. But look, the bridge needs to be replaced, and the Transportation Trust Fund is in a horrible shape.
Well, they built that bridge so high in the first place because the Navy had a pier north of the bridge, and they wanted to put a deepwater port at Myrtle Point. They wanted to build a deepwater port,
right?
Which, of course, all good economic things in Maryland get shanghaied and deep six.
Talking about topic abortion, right?
Okay, well,
yeah. So this year they had a bill, I believe it was HB 930, that unified and took that money from different insurers that have been collecting throughout the last 15 years and banded it together to provide abortion access. And look, this is something that I object to. I've been pro-life my entire life. pro-life voting record accordingly. And I just think it's something morally wrong where you're charging people more for health care on their policy, and now you're providing access to subsidized abortions that are not even Maryland residents. They don't even limit to Maryland residents. Matter of fact, that was an amendment on the floor that was voted against. So look, it is troublesome, and it's one of the priorities of the current Democratic Party.
Okay. Matt, you first ran for office in 2010.
Yes.
You came within a couple hundred votes of beating a long-term incumbent Democrat who was out of step with his own party in Annapolis. They took away his chairmanship. Okay. You came back 4 years.
Johnny and I became really good friends, and he actually became a registered Republican.
Right.
And I thought that was funny because he was always a good, blue dog Democrat.
And he quit after that. He didn't run again, okay? And they scared up this guy Austin Powers from Leonardtown to run against you. and he couldn't even get recommended for judge this time. All right? Dan Slade. All right, good guy, good lawyer.
Good guy.
So things have really changed, but when you first got out there, what was your magic secret at getting out and meeting voters and winning the election, winning as many votes as you did in 2010 and coming back in 2014 and beating two local Republicans in the primary and then a Democrat?
That's one of the things I'm most proud about, Ken. I haven't changed really at all since I was first elected. And when I was first elected, when I first ran for office, I believe that was like the Tea Party years there. And I've always been a fiscal conservative, always been a Republican, and really strive to try to push that agenda forward.
Okay.
And look, and just because people...
Well, look, let's take a little break here and show you. They just brought the food from Fitzy's out here for us. And so we're going to have to cut this interview short. Can't let this great food overlooking Breton Bay get cold.
That's right. That's right.
So this is Ken Rossignol with the Chesapeake Today with Delegate Matt Morgan, Republican of the north end of St. Mary's County. What district is that?
29A, the Freedom Caucus chair.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Matt, and good luck. Are you running again for election next year?
Yeah, I'm going to make that.
Is this your announcement right now? Are you running?
No, this is not my announcement right now, but we'll be doing.
Is this some sort of word game?
Like
you just said you're running.
I am going to run.
I think that's an announcement.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.